Yeah, that's hard work.
Do church work.
Yes.
I brought a few pictures and
Oh, good. You did all of that.
travel with it.
Well, we are, my wife and I are pretty close to, well, we've decided, we really have, we're going to rejoin St. Thomas.
Are you? Good.
Yes.
Good.
We're coming back
Good
to
for
St.
you.
Thomas. We left, we actually got married there. We were, we could have been the first wedding in the new place.
Oh, yeah.
Back in '94, and because they had just finished it in '94.
Yeah.
But we just loved the chapel. We just loved the small chapel.
Well, they still go at 8 o'clock every Sunday.
Oh, I know. That's when we go to church. That's when we go because we love that chapel and we like getting up and all of that. So that's when we go, is at 8 o'clock. And we got married in the small church, what used to be the sanctuary, and then we left. We just got, I don't know. We talked to Ben about it when we left, and there was just, I don't know, we just didn't feel as welcome. I don't know, there just didn't seem to be a warmth at the church. It seemed like it had lost something in the late '90s and there and all that. And in the meantime, I became good golfing buddies with Nick Dyke. And so one thing led to another, and we joined St. Andrews. And so we were at St. Andrews for years, and then Nick left. And we were without a minister for almost 2 years, working with interim minister. And then sort of the same thing happened at St. Andrews. We got to get the same feeling that we did at St. Thomas. So then we church hopped for a while. And but now we like Bill, and we like that 8 o'clock service. So we're going to rejoin.
Well, we went yesterday at 8 o'clock because we were going down to Houston.
Yeah. We didn't go yesterday. We were bad Christians yesterday.
There was at least
Were there?
50 people there at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big...
That's a good group.
Yeah.
He does in my opinion, he does his best preaching. Not that you need a whole lot of preaching. I want to hear a preacher, but he does his best preaching at the 8 o'clock service.
Well, I like the way he preaches. I like the way he doesn't use notes. He stands right there in the middle of the aisle, and he just talks to you. I like that. I really do.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over and visit with him, and I think we're going to.
Well, good for you.
Rejoin.
The only other suggestion I would give you, if I may, is the people over there, and that's the reason we're there. Like the people they require some approaching.
Yeah.
They're not the approachers.
Right.
And they're very comfortable going to people that they know.
Right.
They're not very comfortable going out. So Carolyn and I, my wife and I, always say, well, let's put a smile on our face and we go up and meet people.
Yeah.
And we leave and we said, boy, that was a great service, a great time. Everybody was chit-chatting and we reflect on it, and it was because we did it.
Right. Exactly. But we found, especially in that 8 o'clock, where we're sometimes among the younger ones there at that 8 o'clock, we find that the warmth is a lot more coming.
But you're a professional and you're a local personality.
Right.
So people might be hesitant to come up to you.
Well, that might be true.
And Carol and I spent our whole time in the Marine Corps at A&M.
Right.
Reaching out to people.
Yeah.
Because you're like when you're dealing with parents, you always want to find the parents that are kind of standing off. You go, hey, instead of your son's here, your daughter's here.
One thing I liked about it is when I first shook hands with Bill, he had no idea who I was or what I did. He never heard me on the radio or anything. He listened to something else, and that's fine. So I kind of liked that because it was like we were meeting on all even terms and everything like that. But now I see that Bill is, was the preacher at Ann Armstrong's thing the other day, so I guess he's all highfalutin now. He's met those big wigs now, right? I saw him on TV. I thought, that's great. He was up there with the vice president and all of that. Well, Ted, thank you very much for being on the show. I guess obviously you've seen the show, and we've been at it for 3 years now, over 3 years now, and I've interviewed in 3 years. I've talked to over 100 vets here locally, and what we're doing now is the way it's working out, and I really like it. Is we're alternating weeks to where every week one week you'll see a new show that's just been recorded, in the last month, that's never been seen before, and that'll be followed by a repeat show that was seen about a year earlier, and you're seeing it for the second time. So every guest that I have is going to be on twice in about a year's time. They're going to be on pretty immediately in the next 3 or 4 weeks after we tape the show, and then they're going to be on a year later. Going to repeat it. So that's what I've been able to do and get a lot of exposure and all that. And that way I'm not quite so rushed for doing shows, because for every show I do, that's 2 weeks worth of broadcasting, because I bring back one from a year earlier. Right. Jim Moore was on this last weekend, who was with the food services and all of that, and he was on this last weekend, and I forget who's going to be on this next weekend. I know who's going to be on this next weekend. This is a good show. This is one of the ones that I remember. His name is Albert Novak, and Albert, his nephew called me about him. Albert had developed pancreatic cancer, and he was pretty far along in it, but his nephew really wanted his story on, and I went and visited with Albert, and he was just a delightful man, and I had to go pick him up and bring him back, and we did the show and all of that, and he passed away about 2 weeks after the show aired, and so that was a very special show, and that's the one that's going to repeat next weekend. So that's going to be, I'm looking forward to that one. Sorry. Talk to me about, I know a little bit. I go to the marvelous internet, and you can all of a sudden, everybody can smarten themselves up on the internet so easily. And I pulled up this, this Eagle story from when you retired back in 2001, and so I got a little bit and everything. But I just tell me where you grew up and where you started, and sort of how that led you into the military. And I know you went to Texas A&M, but before that and all that, tell me.
Well, I grew up in Williston, North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
We moved there from Illinois when I was 9 years old, because my dad was a salesman of dynamite explosives.
Really? For
the seismograph crews, and there was an oil strike in northwestern North Dakota, and we moved into a town of Williston, which had grown from 5,000 to 15,000 in short order.
Mm-hmm.
It had marvelous schools, churches, and it was a great place to grow up, because if you had an interest, you could be on an athletic team, or you could be in the school play, or wherever your interest could carry you, you had an opportunity to go there.
Right.
Wonderful coaches, Marine Corps influence. High school football coach was Iwo Jima veteran. My dad had not served in World War II. He would been married, and he was, I think, his 30s or something, and he couldn't serve. Mm-hmm. But my dad was a kind of a rough and tumble guy. Was a boxer in Detroit. White guy boxing in Detroit, so you get the picture there.
Yeah.
My mother was from Palestine, Texas.
Really?
So that was the Texas connection.
Uh-huh.
And I had an idea that I wanted to serve in the military. And since my uncle had gone to the Naval Academy, I thought that might be a route, but when I applied for the Naval Academy, they said maybe next year, because during high school, not only did I play a lot of sports, but I had a good time. So the grades weren't quite where they should be. So Texas A&M was a great alternative, because it was close to my mother's home. It was relatively inexpensive, and less than a week on campus, I decided this is where I was not only going to stay, but this was a wonderful place. So I stayed at A&M for my 4 years and was in the Marine Corps Platoon Leaders Class program.
Was this 61?
I came in the fall of 61, graduated in May of 65, and went off to 31 plus years in the Marine Corps as an infantry officer.
I see.
In the 31 years, I kept track of it. We had 24 different moves, had a variety of assignments, and thoroughly enjoyed the career in the Marine Corps.
After graduation in 65, obviously the Viet Nam War was, I guess, in its earlier stages. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so how did you get, what was your path from A&M to Vietnam?
The Marine Corps sends all its officers, all its second lieutenants, to Quantico, Virginia, for 6 months of what they call the basic school. Doesn't matter whether you're going to be aviator or ground. You go to Quantico and do 6 months at TBS, the basic school, and while you're there, you learn a lot, but you're also evaluated to the extent that they assign you an MOS, which is a military occupational specialty.
Mm-hmm.
In our class of 580 some, I was one of 17 that not only got an infantry designation, but was sent immediately to Vietnam. So I graduated from basic school in December of '65, and in February of '67, after 30 days leave, I was on the Big Bird.
66?
66, excuse me.
66, okay.
February of '66, I was on the Big Bird and flew to Okinawa and then on to Vietnam.
What rank were you then?
Second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
A brown bar all the way.
Yeah. What unit were you with? And
I was with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines.
Right.
There were 4 of us infantry officers out of the 17 that had been designated infantry officers, and 4 of us went over together. 2 of us lived through the first tour. The other 2, unfortunately, were killed in action. And the other guy that was with me, in fact, on the same company, same battalion, is also a retired Major General, as am I. But he, after one tour in Vietnam, he went to aviator, became an aviator, and flew attack airplanes for the rest of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So the 4 of us were there, and the 2 of us that went to 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines Kilo Company, as a matter of fact, were, I know it now better than I did then, but we're blessed to be in a remarkably competent battalion with just great Marines, not only as battalion commanders and seniors, but also the troops that we led.
Indeed. How long was your first tour?
Well, let's see. It was 13 months. The
You
Marine
had
Corps,
3 tours in all, right?
yeah,
Is that right? Uh-huh.
the Marine Corps was doing 13-month tours then, and that was 13 months from the time you left CONUS, continental United States, until you returned. So I left in February of '66 and got back in March of '67.
Okay. That was your first tour.
That was the first tour.
Talk about that tour. What was your job?
Well, I was a infantry platoon commander for 11 months. I was the battalion intelligence officer for about 5 or 6 weeks, and spent my entire time on the ground. I was a company commander for a short period of time when our company commander was killed in action. The company commander killed in action was a very notable individual. He'd been a Notre Dame football player, J.J. Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
And he lasted a month before he was killed. A very talented and superb leader. I can reflect of sitting under the tarpaulin at night with the rain coming down, and then drinking coffee with him, and him telling me about what it was like to play football at A&M, the trips out to play Southern Cal and so forth, and me in my own way recounting my A&M experiences as part of the 12th Man, and all the thrills of being part of the Kyle Field crowd, not being a player obviously, but
right.
But so it was I remember those exchanges very well, and I recall when A&M went up to play Notre Dame, I guess it was in 2000 or whenever it was, we went up there and played, and,
right.
and to go into the stadium and to go into the workout area before the game. They have a huge covered workout area similar to what we have here now at A&M with the McFerrin Center. But he had told me the story that when he was a sophomore, he was kind of on the traveling squad and off the traveling squad. And the last game of the year was Notre Dame was going out to Southern Cal to play USC, and this is the mid-50s. And he said he was just trying his darndest to become part of the traveling squad to impress the coaches, and they were having kind of a walkthrough drill inside this, and he described the place where I later saw at A&M. And some of the Notre Dame football players' names, Nick Petrusani, Myron Patios, Al Ekiwe, those were all not only great All-Americans, but great in the NFL. And after being somewhat exuberant, he recalled that the last thing he remembered was getting knocked on his back, and he woke up in the Notre Dame infirmary listening to the game. at USC because Petrosani and Padios and the rest had decided that this young upstart had had enough, and they hit him every way but up. So when I stood in there, and the Aggie band, the reason we were in there was the Aggie band was they couldn't rehearse on the field, so they were rehearsing in this indoor arena.
Right.
So we're standing on an elevated portion, and when the band is only the Aggie band can play the war hymn, and I was standing there knowing that this is where my former buddy, if you will, had practiced and played, and I thought about that story. I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise considerably. Of course, then going to the game was one that A&M should have won, but lost. You were probably there, so.
Yeah, I wasn't at that game, but I remember it very well. Yeah, for sure. Wow, what a great story. That's a great story.
If RC was here to tell you that Chris Taylor dropped a pass in front of the Notre Dame bench when he was wide open.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that's just that's a story for another time.
There were drop passes. I do remember that. So go on with that first tour. You were
so I was company commander, and the remarkable company, Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. We had two of our Marines won the Medal of Honor. I don't say won; they were awarded the Medal of Honor for heroic actions. We were always on the thick of the action, if you will. I think it was recognized that we were good, and I remember one operations, Hastings, in July of 1966 was the first major known incursion by the North Vietnamese across the DMZ, and we flew from Phu Bai, which was about 120 miles south of the DMZ, went up to a small encampment at Dong Ha, which was about 6 miles from the demilitarized zone. And the next morning, after a huge B-52 strike, our helicopters went in and dropped us off at a junction of two streams. And for the next 10 or 12 days, it was just a non-stop action. I recall we had 3 helicopters that unfortunately were shot down right in our landing zone. We had the action didn't stop when it got dark. We had orbiting gunships, spooky we used to call them, up high, or Puff the Magic Dragon with their guns that put out continuous fire. We had artillery support, close air support. It was just a real intense period of action. I think I saw more heroism and more chaos, and unfortunately more death during those 10 or 12 days than I saw in the rest of my career. As a lieutenant, I thought, well, this is awful or this is great. I was somewhere in between, because everybody that joins the Marine Corps, we like to think, well, we're going to go where the action is. But there was a lot of brave Marines there, and I didn't sense from anybody, well, maybe we've seen just about enough for this week. And little did I know that was going to be as far as intensity of action went, that nothing was ever going to top what we saw. A lot of things that might have compared closely later on in other tours and other places, but that was as tight as I could imagine it getting.
Were you personally have some close calls during this?
Not really that I recall. I remember coming out of when we landed, coming out of the back of the helicopter, and immediately hitting the deck, and when I looked up, unfortunately I saw body parts from people that had been cut up by the blades from the previous helicopters that had come in. Mm-hmm. And there was a tremendous amount of small arms fire going overhead. You can always, at that time, you could recognize the NVA even in the daylight. Their tracer rounds had they were greenish, and the U.S. tracer rounds are red. Mm-hmm. So when you saw, and tracer rounds are usually one out of every 5, so 20% of the fire is all that you can see. And there was it was broad daylight, but there was plenty, too much, I guess you could say, of green tracers going overhead. But right. We were able to stabilize the situation. As I say, we had tremendous Marines that were aggressive. I never once in my career ever, not this time or subsequent years, ever had to wonder about whether my Marines were going to go towards the sound of the guns. In fact, many times I felt like I had to run to catch up with them because they were aggressive, almost to a fault sometime, but wonderfully so. The Marine Corps, certainly then, and I think it's still true now, does not recruit in monasteries. We get really tough kids from East LA, from the Bronx, south side of Chicago, and the farms and ranches of the Midwest. We get young men that want to come in and either prove themselves or settle a score or make their mark. And the courage, especially under fire, that I experienced throughout my career, I'll always think of it as just being remarkable. The bravery I had when I joined the Marine Corps, I knew that it was a tough outfit with a great combat tradition and so forth, but until you actually are there and exposed to it and see it and experience it and realize that you're part of it, it really makes a lifelong, deep impression on you.
Exactly. Where were you stationed? Where was your...
In Vietnam?
Yeah, in the first tour.
Well,
where were you?
The Marine Corps was in what we call Northern I Corps. Vietnam was divided into 4 different corps areas, and it went from north to south. 1, or I Corps, was the Roman numeral 1, was the northernmost area that went from the demilitarized zone down all the way south past Da Nang and Chu Lai. So it was about, if you can think of the coast, about 250 miles from the demilitarized zone coming down the coast with a east-west line going in. So, and we were in the very northern part. We were at Phu Bai, which is about 35 miles south of the demilitarized zone. We were there for about, that was our base camp, so to speak, maybe the first 4 or 5 months, and after that we moved up to Dong Ha, which was, I think I earlier said, about 5 miles south of the demilitarized zone. But as far as where I was, I remember I kept count one time, and I went to 86 days with sleeping on the ground straight, and I went, perhaps more importantly, I went 10 and a half months without seeing a woman with round eyes. Things you think about and remember.
Think about. Exactly. So your first tour, 13-month tour, finished in '67 in what? In April?
March of '67. How could I forget? Yes.
March of '67.
Came home and went to the Marine barracks in Washington, D.C. for ceremonial duty.
I see.
And the reason I went to the Marine barracks for ceremonial duty was previously at the basic school, they evaluated you for ceremonial duties, and my Texas A&M experience, having been a Ross volunteer, etc., I was deemed sufficiently suitable to perhaps one day to go to 8th and I. And since I was a bachelor, because the Marine barracks 8th and I also served as White House social aides, and they wanted the White House social aides to be bachelors, but I had become engaged before I went to Vietnam. So when I checked at into the Marine barracks in March of '67, they said, "Oh, great to have you here," etc., etc. And I said, "Well, it's great to be here, and by the way, I'm getting married in early June." And they said, "It's still great to have you here," because they had that happen a lot, and they had enough for the White House. So got back and was checked in the Marine barracks in March of '67, and got married in June of '67 to Carolyn, who still my wife to this day. God bless her. So it was just under 2 years at the Marine barracks in Washington, and kind of a unique factor there is the company that I was in, Guard Company, did security duty at Camp David for the president.
For LBJ?
LBJ, yes.
And then Nixon?
Well, LBJ was the whole time I was there.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
So what it was is we did 4 weeks down in Washington, D.C. doing ceremonial duties, and then it was 2 weeks up on the hill, as we call it, Camp David, whether or not the president was in residence or not. Several times during my time up there, the president was in residence, but and when he came in residence, we were always augmented by another 40 or 50 Marines.
Right.
Although, if there's any more secure place in the world, I don't know where it would be. But
exactly.
Duty at Camp David was was interesting, but it was fun, and it was also an opportunity to get out and do a lot of shooting, because they had a skeet range up there, and they had a rifle range and a pistol range, and I've always, I can't say loved, but always really, really enjoyed shooting, especially skeet. So
I see.
Fun.
Well, that was a fun detail. I mean, that was good. Did you get to know the president at all? I mean,
not really. I think it was more in passing, and he recognized rank. So it was, hello,
Sure.
Lieutenant, how's it going?
Right.
Great, Mr. President. How are you, sir? Fine. And he'd head off to whatever he was doing. Because usually when the president and his family were looking forward to getting up there, getting out of the limelight, and relaxing.
Right.
So.
Right. Second tour, when did it start?
Well, after the tour at the Marine Barracks in Washington, it was to Quantico for school, or for amphibious warfare school, because that time I'd been promoted to captain. And we got out of school in late August of '69, and then it was back to Vietnam, and I checked in and got a rifle company, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. But by the time I got back, the drawdown under President Nixon had begun. So I had the rifle company for about 6 weeks, and that unit, the 3rd Marines, was going back to the States. But they went, all the Marines, including the officers who had not been in country, as we call it, 3 months, were transferred to stay in country with another 3rd Marine Division unit. Well, when I had checked in, the regimental commander had chatted with me briefly, like he talked to everybody, but I guess I must have made a impression, because the commanding general was looking for an aide to come up and be his aide. So I went up to interview, and the chief of staff said, "You're going to be the aide." And I said, "Great," with tongue in cheek. And the first lieutenant was on his way out, had been his aide, and the general wanted a captain for his aide.
Right.
Not that the first lieutenant hadn't done a good job, because the first lieutenant was Bob Mueller, who's now the director of the FBI.
I see.
So that was the kind of the in my opinion, the caliber of people, fellow lieutenants and captains that were in the Marine Corps that I associated with at the time.
Right.
So I became the aide for, at that time, Major General W.K. Jones, who was a World War II hero from Saipan, Tinian, and all those kinds of places, highly decorated, etc. Wonderful man. And I was his aide in country for about 6 weeks, and before the division headquarters went back to Okinawa. But while we were in Vietnam, that's when the monsoons had come, and because the units were leaving, our part of the division was leaving our part of Vietnam, we did a tremendous amount of flying in extremely marginal weather. I remember one trip down to going down from Da Nang, about 75 miles between Dong Ha, where we were, down to Da Nang. The weather was so bad that we flew out to the coast, saw the coastline, and then hovered all the way down the coastline with visibility. Hardly would have, just couldn't see. And I remember we had one of the chaplains with us, and the chaplain had his rosary beads out the whole time.
That's got to make you nervous.
So I recall, as my wife said, she was at home thinking, "Oh boy, he's the aide. He's with the CG. The C had, she didn't know." So anyway, had all these times. So anyway, the division deployed back to Okinawa in November of 1970, and I continued as the aide on Okinawa for I think it was till April, when the general went home to get his 3rd star and go off into another command. And prior to his leaving, I had said, "When you go, can I go back to Vietnam?" And he said, "Certainly, but I wanted to sweeten the pot and make sure that I could go back." So I said, "Well, I will extend," I told the personnel people, "I'll extend my tour for 2 months, and I want to go back to Vietnam." So they said, "Great." And I said, "Well, when do you think I might be able to go, because I had the assumption, based on all the talk that I had heard at the officers club, that everybody wanted to go back to Vietnam, and they said, well, you're number one on the list, nobody else has volunteered. So I gave myself, the old Aggie salute of, oh no. So, but I went back to Vietnam, and this time there was two of us going down, and the two captains going back, and the other captain unfortunately was killed. And obviously I survived, and I had a rifle company around the Da Nang area, Echo 2-1 for 4, 5, or 6 months, whatever it was. So that was my third tour. My second time overseas was split into two tours.
I see.
But went back down, and by that time the war was based on previous operations was a little bit stagnant, and that we were in positions around Da Nang, primarily protecting the city and protecting the airfield. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of patrolling, but because we were stagnant, the enemy, not being anywhere near dumb, had a lot of booby traps out and mines that we encountered. So in many ways, from my position as a leader, it was tougher, because morale was not picked up or did not increase when you had enemy contact, as had been my experience, but you suffered casualties, and the enemy was largely unseen, or was teenagers or kids or women or whatever that was setting the booby traps as much as soldiers. Mm-hmm. So I felt that tour, last tour in Vietnam, was as challenging as anything I had done, because of the inability to contact the enemy or take out your aggressions, or to pursue the enemy, to pursue the people that were hurting you. I mean, mm-hmm. not only hurting you, but in some cases killing you and your Marines. Mm-hmm. So it was a particularly demanding time.
Yeah. And that was your third tour. Your second and third tour were divided by your time in Okinawa?
Okinawa, yes. The Marine Corps had, ever since the Korean War, the Marine Corps had a huge presence on Okinawa.
Right.
Forward deployed, based on our contingency requirements, first of all in Korea, which were very strong then, plus as kind of a, I guess you could say, a reaction force for the Middle East. To this day, even here in 2008, we still have a huge number of Marines on Okinawa. Plans now are that a portion of them will be moving to Guam, which is not quite so far forward.
Right. So, what were your thoughts at the time of the politics of the war and what was going on back in the United States? I know it's ironic that here we're starting today, as a matter of fact, the Democratic Convention, the 40th anniversary of the famous '68 Democratic Convention, and where the politics of it really peaked back then. What were your thoughts as you recall?
I guess I was so consumed, if you will, wrapped up mm-hmm. in what I was doing, because remember the responsibilities that a commander has in any service, but certainly I can speak with the Marine Corps. Your responsibilities accomplish the mission and then the welfare of your troops.
Exactly.
And your troops and the responsibilities that you have require so much time and effort that really thinking beyond what you're doing, other than, I guess, the realization that you really can't affect things and you have your own responsibilities, so take care of what you can. Mm-hmm. Sergeants have a great way of reminding officers about what's really important in life. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget one of my earliest times in Vietnam is a platoon sergeant saying, "Sir, we really need to worry only about the 6 inches in front of our own foxhole." Mm-hmm. And I found that to be good advice. Not that I'm not and always have been, a very interested citizen of this country and follow politics closely and have an interest in what goes on in Washington and locally also, but I found that just for the best way to serve my country and to take care of my troops was to concentrate on what I had at hand.
Exactly. So. That was a good lesson from the sergeant.
Yes, it was.
Indeed it was.
Number one commandment of being a An officer. Pay attention to your enlisted. Have wisdom beyond your years, for sure.
So what month and year did you leave Vietnam for the last time?
It was November of 1970, and I remember it because we had a tremendous typhoon that came in, and our battalion base was right on the South China Sea.
Right.
And I remember of the winds and the weather were so violent that everybody kind of went to ground, and I do remember that that was one of the times that I had an idea that paid off, and that there was this stronghold of enemy that had been a thorn in the side of us for a long time, and despite the weather we loaded up in amphibious tractors and paralleled down the coast with the waves pounding in and came upon this position, and they did not expect that the Marines would be out, because we went about 5 miles down the coast in awful weather with about 250 very eager Marines, and we attacked and got some much needed revenge, if you will, for all those booby traps.
Oh my goodness!
So I remember that on the way out the door as being well, here we are, and this is what we did. But after that, it was November of '70, and came home.
You came home. I know you got to continue your education later on. I guess at the University of Virginia, is that right?
Well, I was never a resident student there.
I see.
I was. They offered courses in the Washington D.C. area.
I see.
And so, a couple nights a week we went to class, and then the last semester I remember leaving duty in Washington, D.C. at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and with a couple others driving nonstop down to Charlottesville, getting there in time for the 7 o'clock class, going to class from 7 to 9, driving back, and my head would hit the pillow at midnight, and it was up the next morning to fight the D.C. traffic about 05 or so.
What were you doing in D.C.?
In Washington, D.C., I was assigned to Headquarters Marine Corps, and I was the monitor, or the person that assigns all the infantry captains in the Marine Corps. So I had all the infantry captains. I also had all the tankers, the amphibious tractors, and the ground supply people.
I see.
A population of about 1,500 officers that I was responsible for assigning to all the billets in the Marine Corps where they were needed and supposed to go.
What's your rank now?
I was captain, and I was promoted to major right at the end.
Okay. Yeah. At the end of that tour.
Yes, I was.
Right there. And then where'd you go?
Well, I went down to the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, but I went via Fort Benning, Georgia, to go to jump school.
I see.
So that was as I say, it was. I realize that to this day it was the first part of July, and then as anybody that's anywhere in the South, but July at Fort Benning and going to jump school was hot, and being the senior man in the class, the only field grade officer, a major, I was assured that the sergeants would give me their best attention to make sure that I. But it was a treat, because once they had found out that you could do all the physical things and that you were there and a pretty good guy, I mean, they had enough problems to concentrate on without worrying about somebody they could do everything. So after a few days, they'd say, "This is the requirements for today. Can you do them?" When I do the requirements, they say, "Well, that's enough for today, sir." Oh, really? They would say, "Please, sir, can we go on and train?"
So you learned how to jump out of airplanes?
Yeah, that was fun.
Did you ever have to jump out of an airplane?
No, never. I did only in training. That didn't. Finally,
just in case you ever had to jump out of an airplane.
Finally, on the final jump was a daylight jump, because all the others, as they say, are night jumps, because you come out and your eyes are closed. They say, "Well, we hope you have a daylight jump." So by the time, and really it's wonderful training, and by the time you get there, you can almost enjoy it, because your eyes are open all the way down, and you just check everything out. So.
Right. It says here Naval War College is Service Staff College, is that right?
Yeah, that was in Newport, Rhode Island.
That was in Newport. That's a nice place.
That was wonderful.
My wife and I went there 5 summers ago, as a matter of fact, just for a vacation.
That's great. One of the fact the president of the college was Admiral Stockdale. And Admiral Stockdale is former POW Medal of Honor awardee, and he was
vice presidential candidate.
Yes, vice presidential candidate. He was one of our instructors, and he was wonderful, especially when he would have the President's Hour. The President's Hour was was any time he wanted. And the president's hour would be him up on stage before 400 to 500 officers in the two classes that were there. And he would talk about anything he wanted to talk about. He was the president. And some of them were just absolutely spellbinding and great. And others were, you went out scratching your head and say, well, either the admiral's off base or I didn't pay attention to it. But I remember one of the really astounding ones. He had talked about Stockdale talking.
Right.
He talked to the class, and he talked about his experiences in the POW camp, and what a difference that some people got through POW camp by one person designed a house he was going to build. Everything from how many nails to how much paint to wood, and he just had this in his mind, so he kept his mind busy. Another guy became a physical fitness guy that could do, by the time he got out, he could do one-arm handstands. And previously the guy had never done anything like this. And he talked about how important religion was. In fact, he concluded his remarks by talking about the value of religion. So when he got done, you could hear a pin drop. And one of my fellow Marines stood up and asked a question. I'll paraphrase it. He said, "Admiral, do you mean that to be a good soldier, you can't be a good soldier unless you're a good Christian?" And this is a pretty tough question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about it. So the admiral kind of walked from side to side on stage, and he said to the audience, he said, "You know, in my lifetime, I've known and observed too many good soldiers." That includes Navy, Airman, Marine, whatever, just the vernacular. "I've known too many good soldiers who weren't Christians. But I've never known a soldier who was a Christian who wasn't a better soldier because of it." Mm-hmm. And with that, somebody down in the front, as we didn't usually do this, somebody down in the front started clapping, and everybody up gave him a standing ovation.
Wow.
And I thought as you might gather by the fact it sticks with me to this day.
Sure.
It made an impression on me, and it made an impression, I think, on a great number of officers in the class. But that's a type of wisdom that comes from endowed leaders who have the courage and what it takes to do what he did as a naval aviator, his time in the Hanoi Hilton in isolation for over 2 years, and then to be able to put that across to officers. And that, to me, is the essence of really good leadership.
Yeah. You know Al Meyer?
Al Meyer.
Yeah.
Name's familiar.
He lives in College Station. He was 6-year POW, and he was at the Hanoi Hilton when Stockdale was there at the same time. He lives in College Station. Alton Meyer is his name, and I've had him on the show. He's the only Vietnam POW that I've had on. But he told me some stories about Admiral Stockdale. I think Admiral Stockdale was the ranking officer in the particular part of the prison camp where he was. But it's too bad that our most recent history of Admiral Stockdale is that that little vice presidential thing with Ross Perot, where he came off as being almost kind of silly sometimes, and nobody really realizes what a tremendous leader that he really was. That history, I don't think, ever treated him fairly during that span.
A study of Admiral Stockdale is very worthwhile.
Yeah.
To understand who he was and how he became what he was, because he was an only child that grew up playing the piano.
Right.
And went to the Naval Academy, ended up playing 150-pound football, and found himself in the what I call the rough and tumble world of naval aviation in the ready room, and found himself. He was a superb squadron commander. And the rough treatment that he got in a POW camp and the isolation maybe sounds strange, but brought out the very best in a man of wonderful character.
Right.
But never would anybody confuse him to be a eloquent speaker.
Right.
He was he internalized much too much, in my opinion, but he was a tremendous writer.
Exactly.
And one-on-one, like in a small group, we had seminars of 15, and the best thing that all of us agreed in the seminar was to get him away from his notes and have him start answering questions. And some of the experiences he shared when you could have him answer stick with me to this day.
Sounds like a lot like a guy named John McCain. Get him away from his notes and just let him start talking, you know. I thought the other day when he did the thing at Saddleback, I thought he was at his very best when he wasn't looking at a teleprompter.
Well, John, it's funny you should mention John McCain. When we were, when you're selected for general officer or admiral, they have a course in Washington called Capstone. And the capstone is maybe 35 or 40 of you newly selectees, and you have really focused, like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs comes over, etc. One of the luncheons was to go to Capitol Hill, have a brief light lunch, and then Senator McCain came in and talked to us with no notes. And so he's got a military audience. He's a military guy, and he talked to us and no notes and just, hi, how's it going? Then he talked to us, and it was really, really good.
Yeah.
So the real guy is a man of character,
right,
of intellect, and a man that you could really identify with. And at the same time, really like. If he was your next door neighbor, you'd feel, man, I'm really fortunate to have him as a neighbor. Exactly. By the way, can I borrow your lawnmower?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I wish that he would come across, that way in the campaign rather than the teleprompter type of thing. That it comes off as so, stiff and, in that form. But anyway, you went to Australia?
Yes.
What was that for?
The services have levels of schooling, and the senior most level is top level school. National War College, Naval War College, etc. But
right.
They also send the number off to service schools, top-level schools that are in other countries. And I was selected to go to Canberra, Australia, for the Australian Joint Services Staff College. I was the only Yank in the class of 30-something. There was a Brit, there was Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, India, Thailand, and many Aussies. And it was the whole family went, and we just had we went in November. I think it was memory doesn't serve, 82, I think. We went
right.
and we went and got there in November of 82, and it was the middle of summer. And when we graduated and headed off to further assignments, it was June of 83 in the winter time in Australia, but still very pleasant, and the whole experience was great. Living in Australia was wonderful.
Take me from then to sort of run me from then to, I guess you came here in 96, is that right?
Yes.
As a commandant?
Yes. When I came here in 96, August 96, I had retired from the Marine Corps.
I see.
So I was not on active duty when I came here.
Right, so you retired when?
I retired in August of 1996.
Okay.
At Quantico.
Okay.
After serving my last active duty assignment was president of Marine Corps University and the commanding general of Marine Corps schools, which means all the schools at Quantico, all the ones that I had attended, everything from NCO school all the way up through the Marine Corps War College, they came under my command, if you will. But really the leaders that ran these schools were top-notch guys. In fact, one of the colonels that worked for me then is now the commandant of the Marine Corps, Jim Conway. So it was, I guess, a Vince Lombardi type deal. All you had to do was get the air in the football and then get it out in the field and get out of the way and let them win.
Right.
But it was a very worthwhile year. I do recall one statistic that was kind of unique, that I had 19 PhDs, history PhDs working for me. So with the Masters in Education, have 19 PhDs working for me. I thought that was kind of unique. Of course, they were the first ones to remind me of that, but I didn't have, so they were aware that they outranked me with regards to their academic standards. But I guess, you asked where I went. I guess an interesting assignment was, as a BG, was to work in the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon. And I don't know what it's like to play in the Super Bowl, but I would imagine that what I felt every day walking into the Pentagon to go to the National Military Command Center would be somewhat similar, in that the responsibilities were huge and that there was no margin for error. You had to perform, because the defense and welfare of the nation depended not necessarily on you, but on the information that you fed to others.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when Desert Shield and Desert Storm went down, that I was on duty the night that Saddam Hussein crossed in to Kuwait.
Mm-hmm.
And the decisions we made that night, everything from going from DEFCON 5, Defense Condition 5, down to DEFCON 2, from alerting the, and I enjoyed this, alerting the 82nd and 101st Airborne, as well as the 3 Marine divisions, of turning around a carrier task group to head back, that was Diego Garcia on its way home, to go back to working with the White House Situation Room to freeze all the Iraqi assets that we had any control of, all the United States, anywhere we had control of. And that was just in the first 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But what we had to do is we had to keep the chairman, as well as the Secretary of Defense, informed sufficiently, because they knew that when they came to work the next morning that they were going to have a full day.
And was Rumsfeld
No,
Secretary of Defense?
The Secretary of Defense was Cheney.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Cheney was
Under
Secretary of
Bush 41,
Defense,
right,
and
right.
the chairman was Colin Powell.
Right. Right.
So,
right.
what we wanted to do was make sure that we were sufficiently schooled or efficiently trained to know that if we kept them informed, that they wouldn't have to come in,
Mm-hmm.
because they were going to have a full day. So they didn't come in, but the next morning when we turned it over to the team that was taking over for us, it was going to be with them. It was like walking out of there and saw varsity's horns off. We did well.
Yeah.
And there was a huge team in there. I had a team of 25 people.
Exactly.
Plus the vice chairman, Admiral Jeremiah, had come in, and he was a Navy 4-star who was extremely competent, capable, and had the correct temperament at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But and then after that, as the Desert Shield and Desert Storm went on and eventually came to the actual combat, being in the National Military Command Center at that time and watching Secretary Cheney and General Powell, to watch them work, and on many times being the lead briefer for briefings that they received, and the questions that they had, my admiration and respect for them was extremely high. Extremely high. Very not only for them as individuals, but the system, if you will, that the United States has for the response, the measured response that we gave, in the way that was executed was really remarkable.
So you were on duty that night that we all stayed up all night and watched the commentators with their gas masks on and all of that. I mean, I'll never forget that.
Well, what happened was the way that and in fact, this is a good Aggie story. The person that I relieved was a brigadier general in the Air Force who just happened to be a classmate, class of '65 from A&M, named Hale Burr.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came on, it was 8 p.m. at 2000, and I was going to be on till 06 the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
His things were breaking like crazy, so he stayed maybe an extra hour to make sure that the transition was smooth, etc. But he went home because he was going to have to come back the next day.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to come back the next day at noon the next day. So he went home. But the transition, so the two of us, we had not seen each other from the time we graduated until we both were assigned to the National Military Command Center.
Wow.
So here we are, both from the two Aggies from different services that are in there.
Yeah.
And we're both on duty the night when, as you could say, all hell breaks loose, and we're on duty there.
I'll be darned.
So
wow, that's.
So and we maintain
One of those.
contact to this day.
I'll bet you do. Where's he live?
He lives up in Dallas.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he always brags. He brags too much about his grandkids. I never get a word in about mine.
So how long were you in Washington?
I think it was about 14 months.
Yeah.
14 months, because I went to the, after that I went out to Camp Pendleton and was the assistant division commander for the 1st Marine Division. They had, by the time I got there, they had just come back, and they were coming back from a Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and it was a time to tie up all the loose ends, if you will. The people were tired, the equipment was even more tired, and it was catch up on all that was going on. A lot of people were transferring out, so it was a busy time for me. And then from that I went to be the commanding general of the 1st Forced Service Support Group, which was service support. You might imagine it's supply, but it's everything from motor transport to water purification to how you handle gasoline and fuel. And I was down there for a short period of time before we were deployed to Somalia in December. And some of the years are starting to go a little quick here. December, whenever, 92, 93.
Are you a brigadier general now?
I'm still a brigadier general.
Okay.
92, we go to Somalia, and that was a unique experience, which was enlightening to the max. Because of I'd never seen such, I guess, lawlessness in a city of over 1 million people in such conditions. Impossible to imagine what we encountered there with regards to the conditions. Just a complete chaotic environment.
Wow.
No schools, no hospitals, no jails, no mayor. Lots and lots of guns, lots and lots of mean people. A minimum amount of food, but plenty of drugs for them to use. The amount of pane of glass left in any window in the town. Any place where there had been copper had been ripped out. Where the American embassy had been, the compound there had been looted and destroyed to a degree that's hard to imagine. The port was in absolute shambles. And we came in and, bless the hearts of the United States, made order out of it and stabilized the situation, and were able to get food and water distributed, and really, really, truly made a difference. But for somebody to understand the situation it's difficult. I don't know how your time is. But
no, we're doing fine. We're doing fine.
But one of the things, if you have a city of 1 million people, where do they get water, especially when it's hot? Well, behind Mogadishu is a city of 1 million people. Behind the city and the port, if you will, about 1.5 miles up is a ridge line. On top of this ridge line was a power plant. So my Marines, including electricians and engineers and so forth, went up to the power plant, and there's a big, huge generator up there, and we met the guy that ran it and so forth, and that didn't work, and so we said, can we fix it? So about 4 hours we were able to fix it to get it running. And during the 4 hours I was able to go around and figure out how the water really was distributed. So if you can picture this ridge line going in 1 mile in each direction, there's about 8 pumping stations, 16 total pumping stations, located maybe a quarter of a mile from each other. Each one of these pumping stations, remember, on a ridge line that pump the water down into the town. There's armed encampment living, maybe 10, 15 families, maybe 50 people with weapons, and they own, if you will, that station to pump the water down there. So the payoff that they make back to the guy that runs the generator is alive and well. So then these water lines, 16 different water lines, or whatever number it was, that go down into the city. At the city, there's various water points. So during the next week or so, we find where the water points are down in the city. At each one of those water points is at least 5 guys that are armed. So the citizens don't have access to the water until they make payment. So if you want water, your payment may be a chicken, a pig, or maybe 5 minutes over in the bushes for the lady of the family. While these guys, and okay, now you can have your water type of thing.
Wow.
So everything in that city is based on the barter system. And it's a horrible way of life. because you see the same thing going on in the marketplace. To go into the marketplace, of course, there's no refrigeration in the. You don't want to be a camel in Somalia because camel meat is sold everywhere. Right. And along about 10 o'clock in the morning when it starts warming up, the sights and smells, if you will, of the entire marketplace are something to behold because it's massed people, for sure. And you're going down there with as a possible target because you're going through there in vehicles. Of course, you've got weapons, but you have nothing in your vehicle that can be picked off. Like if you might have a camera, you would never leave a camera in your vehicle. You even wouldn't want to leave any type of drinking water, a battery, or anything that could be picked off because wherever you are, you're a target to be ripped off. But to the credit of the Marines and the Army some Army units that were with us, we brought the stabilization to a chaotic situation. Not that we solved the problem of Somalia because that's probably, I don't know. Irreconcilable? How's that for a good word?
Indeed. So after Somalia?
Somalia, it was back to,
And what year are we talking about now?
I think that I'd have to check my notes.
Okay.
92. Anyway, so in Somalia, I got the phone call.
Right.
Selected for 2 stars. So came back to Camp Pendleton and got orders to go out to Hawaii to be the director of operations for the Pacific Command. I think many of the viewers will be aware that the United States divides the world into commands for 4 stars. And one of them is the Pacific, and so we had a 4-star admiral out there that commanded all the forces in the Pacific, and he had a director of operations, the J3, Major General, and that's the billet that I had out there for 2 years, and it was a tremendous amount of responsibility, of course, but also a lot of travel. Vietnam, Laos, Korea, Japan, Australia. It was lots of travel and a lot of responsibility. But once again, I felt really, I guess, reassured in the fact that the United States is doing things right, doing them really not only right, but doing them really good. I felt good about my country because there was. My experience was there's nothing selfish about our country, that we're really trying to help other people live lives of freedom and as much prosperity as they can enjoy.
Exactly.
And I think the United States does this with certainly we want to prosper ourselves, but not at the expense of somebody else. And we interacted not only militarily, but we interacted politically. We ensured that there was opportunities for education for people of these countries that wanted to come to the United States, not only our military schools, but in fact, at one time, the president of the Philippines, the president of, or king, I'm not sure what his title was, of Thailand and of South Korea had all been graduates of military academies in the United States. So this interaction that the United States almost does as a matter of course is not so well understood or appreciated or accepted by other countries.
Exactly.
But when you see it in operation, you just have a tremendous sense of pride for your country that really we do have principles and are making a difference in so many ways around the world.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So keep going.
So
when do we get to A&M?
Got to A&M in the
2001. I mean,
no,
96.
Fall of '96.
Right.
6 years as commandant of the Corps of Cadets, and was delighted, thrilled to come back to A&M and be the commandant.
How did that all go down? I mean,
well, there was an interview process. I was signed at Quantico, and I had been back to A&M several times over the years to review parades and talk to cadets, and knew General Darling, and I knew the Vice President of Student Affairs, Malin Sutherland, and when Tom Darling decided to retire, I knew the billet was open, and I submitted my application, resume, and along with 3 or 4 others was called back to College Station, went through the interview process, and talked to numerous people, and ate numerous meals, and got the word that I'd been accepted or approved to come back, and quickly retired from the Marine Corps. And I hadn't planned on retiring from the Marine Corps, but the billet came open, and I knew Tom Darling had been in it for 6 years, and I knew that if I didn't leap upon it, it might not be there. And so with concurrence from my wife, we said, yep, let's go to College Station and get back with all the wonderful folks.
Being close to home.
Well, she's from Rhode Island.
Oh, that's right.
That's it. So her side of the family is Massachusetts and Rhode Island. She was her dad
from
was
Palestine.
Just my mother.
Your mother.
My
that's
mother.
Right. This
my
was
wife.
Your wife.
Wife was
your mother's family.
Yeah, my wife was from a Navy family, and I met her in Washington D.C. and had grown up in New England and so forth. So anyway, we came back, and the 6 years with the Corps of Cadets were just wonderful. Just wonderful.
Yeah.
I loved working with the cadets and watching them grow. You know, the maturation from the time that you're a freshman in college until you graduate is remarkable. And I think, you know, whether you're in the Corps or not, I'm sure it's remarkable. But I can guarantee you that in the Corps, with all the activities that go on in the Corps and the challenges, if you will, that there's just continues to be, in my mind, a magical process.
Yeah. And
to be part of that magic for 6 years was extremely fulfilling and most enjoyable.
Right. What do you regard as the biggest accomplishments of the Corps while you were?
Well, I guess there's several. They all kind of blend together. I guess you could say the fact that the Corps retained its size and vigor, if you will, from the day I took over till the time I left. We didn't decrease in size, and of course, size is always a point of importance, because it's you want to have a Corps would like to have it of 2,400, but that we're staying at 1,900, but 2,000 is always a good number, and we maintain that. We also came through the bonfire collapse and crisis and in good form, and that took a tremendous. I think the Aggie heart, Aggie soul, if you will, to include the Corps, certainly took a big hit when the bonfire collapsed, and to have the Corps rebound from that the way it did, as well as the entire community and the university. But the Corps part, which I was familiar with, was very gratifying. Mm-hmm. I had a part in the construction of the permanent review stand over on the drill field, which is to this day, which I think is a good deal. So that further put the stamp on the Simpson drill field, if you will.
Right.
And I think from a sports standpoint, the highlight was being at St. Louis for the Kansas State victory when we won the Big 12 championship. Unique thing of that. Were you there for the game?
No, matter of fact, I wasn't. I was watching on TV. I was doing a women's basketball game, and I was in New York that day, and I couldn't go to the game.
Just briefly on it.
Yeah.
The stadium is 75 or 80% purple, Kansas State, because it's a short drive, etc. And they have the band and the Aggie sections down in one corner, and you know, you probably recount the plays as well as I can, but when Sir Parker scored the touchdown, we won the game, etc. You know, the Aggie side's in pandemonium. You know, and then the way we end the game with the yells and cheers and so forth. So the Kansas State people have, by the time we get all done with all the celebrating, all the yells and everything, the stadium's almost empty except for the Aggies, who are kind of still celebrating. But it came time, and we're with the Aggie band. The Aggie band's got to leave and go out to the buses and get on the airplane and go back on the station. But it's starting to rain outside. It's kind of the all-day drizzle and fog has turned into rain. So the way that we'd come in was through this tunnel under the stadium. So we start down this tunnel, and all the Kansas State fans are still in the tunnel because it's raining outside. So all of myself, I go back to my time at A&M and all this trouble. I was, oh my God, it's got kind of this huge fight's going to go on. Oh, what a, you know. So anyway, the Kansas State fans cleared a path. And as the Aggie band marches by, and anybody that's heard the Aggie band march by when they're not playing their music but have the metallic click of the drums,
Right.
know that that's almost as loud, and of course everybody's in perfect step. And as the people cleared aside and backed up to the wall and the Aggie band came through, they started to clap.
Yeah.
And I had the hair went up in the back of my neck,
yeah,
and I said, does it ever get any better
Right.
than this?
Right.
I went outside,
Yeah.
and the buses are right there, so we didn't even get wet getting on the buses.
Yeah.
And we got on, and we got on the buses and went to the airport. I mean,
They loved the band. They still didn't think that Sir Parker got into the end zone, but they loved the band.
well, I was right there, and that official had no problem.
That was funny.
Did you hear that story they asked about Darrell Roy one time? You remember that 1963 when they had that controversial play in the end zone and Willenborg intercepted the pass and the guy said out of bounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So they had Darrell Roy was speaking to this group of Aggies and this guy went and gave the whole lead, and he was there. He saw the game, etc. He said to this day he hadn't said, Coach, was he inbounds or out of bounds? And the guy and Darrell Roy says, I don't know, but the official giving the signal gave us out of bounds.
That's funny.
So anyway.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered whether it was out of bounds if I forgot who our
John Brotherton. Intercepted the pass.
Well, no, I'm talking about who fumbled the football when we were.
That's right.
Yeah, all we had to do was run out the clock. All we had to do is say who that was.
John Brotherton, captain.
Yeah, who tried to gain a few more yards.
Number 80.
Yeah, tried to gain a few more yards and got the ball straight.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. Great guy. Good, really a good football.
That was probably the most heartbreaking play. People don't go back. That might have been the most heartbreaking fumble in A&M history right there. That fumble.
So far.
Yeah, so far. That's true. So since 2001, you've been
2002.
2002. You've been
31
retired.
May 2000. Been retired. Living in College Station.
You have 2 daughters?
2 daughters. Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Where are they?
Well, one's as we speak started University of Houston Law School this morning.
I see.
And
Right.
one is a wonderful mom in Plano, Texas, with 2 kids, married to an Aggie. She's an Aggie.
And you and Carolyn have been married how long?
I knew you were going to ask that. 41 years. 41 years. Yes.
That's wonderful. That's great. That's great. Show me what you got there. What'd you bring?
Okay. Well, this is